The tunnel under the ranger station inhaled, and the trapdoor tried to shut on my hands. Cold air punched up from the dark, then reversed, pulling at my sleeves like it knew my name. My barometer needle fell hard, and the brass key, tagged T6, went warm against my palm. I already knew the rule before I opened it. One sentence from a basement advisory email, plain as a fence post. Keep it locked. I opened it anyway, and that is what this account is. A night park ranger learns quick that fear has practical causes. Bears, bad footing, hypothermia, the kind of silence that means the wind shifted. I had worked 8 winters in the Lassen foothills, the last 2 at Cinder Creek Station. And I never made room for ghost stories because the job already had enough ways to kill you. I am writing this now because the station is staffed again and someone is going to notice the hatch. The district office will call it a maintenance issue and the next person will believe them. I believed them, and I had every reason to think I was being smart. Overtime was why I took that night shift in the first place. My dad needed in-home care, and my insurance only stayed decent if I stayed employed. Quitting never entered my mind, not even when the air started breathing under the floor. A few years before, on a different posting, I followed procedure while a man bled out waiting for clearance. That memory sits in me like a stone, and I keep touching it without meaning to. The worst part is how reasonable it felt in the moment. The station after dark runs on small routines. I checked the bear spray cabinet, topped off the coffee, and walked the back hallway that smells like wet pine and old boot rubber. Cinder Creek Station sat on a fire road off Route 89, and after midnight the only other sound was the trees. The generator room vibrated through the soles of my boots, steady enough to trust. An email came in on the shared computer, subject line basement access advisory. It was plain, bureaucratic, written like it had been copied from a memo that was itself a copy. The note mentioned T6 in passing, like it was just a closet number. A metal key tag marked T6 hung on the board beside the basement door. The tag looked newer than all the scratched labels around it, which felt wrong in a place that never updates anything. My thumb kept rubbing the stamped letters while I told myself it was nothing. Basement storage in a ranger station is always a mess you inherit. Boxes of trailhead signs, spare radios, a mop bucket with dried bleach crust, and binders nobody reads. That night, the floor around the shelves felt colder than the rest, like the concrete held a pocket of winter. The cold was specific, concentrated in one corner near the shelf leg. Something below had pressed itself up against the slab, or that is what the air suggested. My barometer needle dropped while I was still on the bottom step, faster than any weather shift I had ever clocked. Then the floor breathed, not loud, not dramatic. A faint exhale through a hairline gap in the corner, cool against my boot, carrying wet soil and something metallic underneath. One exhale, then nothing. The generator hum swallowed the quiet before I could count. The first real warning came as quiet, not sound. The generator hum stopped, not faded, stopped. So clean, my ears rang to fill the gap. My flashlight beam wobbled because my hand did, and I hated that. Silence in the woods can mean a cougar nearby, but silence in a building means something mechanical failed. I told myself I was checking for safety because that sounded better than curiosity. A blue shift binder sat on the shelf with a laminated card half slid out. Water had warped the plastic, and one corner was cracked like a bitten nail. The printed rule line had a smear across it that mattered more than it should have. Ventilate before locking. The missing word could have been never, but the smear made it look like simple guidance. Air gets stale in old basements, so ventilate felt responsible. My fingers stayed on the card while I argued with myself. A trapdoor waited under a thin rug in the coldest corner. The hinges were newer than everything around it, bolted into the concrete with hardware store screws. A rubber seal ringed the edge like a lid on a cooler. My logbook training kicked in, the part that says document first. The entry sheet inside the binder had a blank spot labeled for basement access, and it made me feel expected. That expectation should have scared me more than it did. The key tagged T6 fit the padlock cleanly. The lock clicked open with a sound that had no business being that crisp. My hand hesitated long enough to feel honest, then lifted anyway. The hatch opened an inch, and air moved like a living thing. Not a breeze, not a draft, but a deliberate pull that tugged my shirt toward the gap. The smell that rose was damp soil mixed with something metallic, like coins left in rain. A sensible person would have closed it right then. I told myself I needed to check for a water leak, because spring melt can undermine foundations. That lie tasted small, but it still counted. My barometer needle dropped again, fast enough to notice without thinking. Pressure change, I told myself. And that made it physics, not fear. The hatch flexed under my grip like something below pushed up to meet it. A low sound rose from the seam, almost too quiet to call a sound at all. Breathing has rhythm, and this had rhythm. My flashlight beam slid into darkness, caught on a rung of a metal ladder, then vanished deeper. The breach was mine. I opened what I was told to keep shut. The reversal arrived right away when the tunnel inhaled and the hatch tried to take me with it. The cost started with my hands. Rubber seal bit down, pinching skin, and pain made my grip sloppy. The law became obvious in my bones. The tunnel took air, and it took you with it. My vow formed in the same instant. I would close it, lock it, and pretend I never touched it. That plan lasted maybe 30 seconds. The pull strengthened without warning. My boots slid a fraction on the concrete, and the cold on the floor turned into real suction. The ladder below clanged once, like it was being lifted toward me. My radio crackled on my shoulder, then went dead. Static cut off mid-hiss, leaving my own breathing loud in my ears. The station felt like it was holding its breath with me. I dropped flat on my stomach and hooked one arm around the shelving leg. The hatch edge sawed at my fingers, and the key tag T6 pressed into my palm like a brand. When the tunnel inhaled again, it did it deeper, like it learned my weight. My flashlight slipped, bounced once, and rolled toward the open seam. Instinct snapped my hand out, and the beam caught a glimpse of something on the ladder. A dark smear, not a stain, more like a shadow, clinging to metal. The hatch jerked wider. Air screamed past my face with a thin whistle, and the barometer needle slammed against its stop. My shoulder popped hard enough to spark white behind my eyes. Some part of me stayed stubborn. I had dealt with rock slides and sudden floods, and you solved those with calm and grip. My mouth said, "Come on," like the tunnel could hear encouragement. The pull eased for a heartbeat, then returned in a pattern, inhale and pause. It felt like timing, like a system. That detail made me colder than the basement floor ever did. I got the hatch down to a slit, just enough to break the suction. The seal hissed, and the pressure equalized with a wet click, too intimate for concrete. The moment it shut fully, the generator hum came back, steady like nothing happened. My hands shook while I snapped the padlock closed. The key tag T6 had left a red imprint on my skin, and it stayed there longer than it should. I tried to laugh, and the sound came out wrong, thin and tight. Logic demanded documentation, so I wrote an incident note in the binder. My pen felt slick in my fingers, and I blamed sweat. The note looked normal when I finished, which should have been reassuring. The station computer showed one new alert when I returned upstairs. A maintenance ticket had auto-generated, and my name was already attached to it. I had not typed anything, and the mouse sat untouched. That was the first clue the rules were not for safety. They were for obedience. A system that writes for you can also erase you. I called the district number and got routed to the on-call veteran. His voice sounded like gravel and smoke, the kind of voice that never wastes syllables. He did not ask what I wanted, which made my stomach drop. "You opened it," he said. The sentence hit harder than the tunnel's pull. My throat tightened, and for a second I could not speak at all. When I managed words, they sounded defensive. "I checked for leaks," I said. "You checked because you needed it to be real," he said. He did not sound angry, just tired, like this was another form to file. Then he gave me a number, and it made my skin crawl. "Dead air lasts 10 seconds. You run." No explanation followed, and none was needed. He added one more line, quieter, like he hated himself for saying it. "Do not ventilate. That card is bait." Then, lower still, almost to himself, "The key stays on station. Do not take it home." The call ended before I could ask anything else. My radio crackled once after, then stayed silent, and the silence felt studied. I stared at the station wall map, like it might hold a secret door. The rest of the night should have been routine. Instead, every sound became evidence, every hum a measurement, every pause a threat. I kept checking my barometer like it was a heart monitor for a building. Around 2 in the morning, the barometer needle twitched without any weather change. The station windows showed calm darkness, and no wind worried the treetops. The needle dipped and rose in a slow rhythm that matched breathing. I went back to the basement because I wanted proof. That was my flaw, plain and ugly, the same flaw that made me follow procedure back then. I believed proof would let me control the story. The padlock on the hatch sat closed, exactly as I left it. The key tag T6 felt warmer than the other keys in my pocket, like it had been in sunlight. My hand hovered over the rug and did not lift it yet. The silence came first. The generator hum stopped again, so sharp it made my teeth ache. My radio stayed mute, and even my flashlight seemed to hold back its beam. 10 seconds is not long until you count it with your pulse. By 6, sweat turned cold on my back. By 9, something under the floor tapped once as if answering. My body moved before my thoughts caught up. Boots hit stairs, and I took them 2 at a time, not caring how loud I was. The generator hum returned right as I reached the top landing. That escape should have convinced me. Instead, it left a question, and questions become hooks. If the tunnel could stop the generator sound, what else could it control? At the end of my shift, the relief ranger arrived early. She carried her own coffee, wore brand new boots, and looked like she still believed the job was mostly sunsets. I envied her for a second, then hated myself for it. "You look wrecked," she said. "Rough night," I said, and my lie came easy. "Anything I should know?" she asked. The honest answer would have been everything. Instead, I told her the usual. Bear reports, trail closures, a radio dead spot near the north lot. That last detail was true, and it still felt like betrayal. I went home with the barometer in my pocket. It was not issued gear, just a small old thing I kept, because it made me feel competent. On my kitchen table it ticked once every few minutes, needle barely moving like a distant inhale. Sleep never took. Every time the house got quiet, I waited for the generator hum that did not exist. Dead air stretched in my bedroom, and I caught myself counting to 10. The next day I returned to the station because I needed to stop it properly. My dad's aid schedule ran off my paycheck, and I could not afford to become the person who reported ghosts. Responsibility has a way of dressing itself up as bravery. The shift binder was still on the shelf where I left it. My incident note was not. The page looked clean, untouched, like I had never written a word. The pen sat where I left it, but the ink tip was dry, crusted over. The laminated card had slid deeper into the binder, and the smear looked different. The line now read clearer, almost mocking. Ventilate before locking. My mouth went dry and I felt something like shame. Evidence was not disappearing by accident, it was being corrected. I checked the station security camera feed on the computer upstairs. The footage from the night before played in grainy gray, and I leaned close enough to fog the screen. The basement view showed me entering, bending to the rug, and lifting the hatch. That part matched reality, which almost comforted me. Then the footage showed something else. It showed me opening the hatch again an hour later, calmly, like I was doing a chore. My memory had no room for that second visit. The video did not show my face clearly, just my uniform and my posture. But the key ring flashed. The tag on it was readable for one clean frame. T6. The discrepancy landed like a punch. I expected one breach and got two. The system had already written a version of me that kept going back. My radio crackled from the desk, and a voice came through low and strained. It was my voice. It said, close it now." And the signal died. My stomach turned so hard I thought I might pass out. I grabbed the radio like shaking it could shake out the truth. Static returned for a second, then cut off again, into perfect quiet. The new ranger showed up behind me without warning. Her boots on the tile snapped me out of the trance. She looked at my hand clamped around the radio and frowned. "Did you just call yourself?" she said. "No," I said too fast. Her gaze shifted to the computer screen where the basement footage still played. On the monitor, my filmed self turned toward the camera and paused, like it knew it was being watched. Her face tightened with something like anger. "You didn't tell me about this," she said. "I was trying to handle it," I said. "Handle what?" she asked. The right answer would have been a confession. Instead, I made it worse by reaching for the binder, to prove I was not imagining things. The binder felt heavier than paper should, damp at the spine. A scrap of paper fell out when I opened it. It was a handwritten note, creased and old, stuck between two pages like a bookmark. The ink looked faded, but the message stayed sharp enough to sting. "Do not answer when it breathes." No signature, no date, no comfort. She read it over my shoulder and went pale. Her hand lifted toward the basement keyboard, then stopped, hovering. I heard myself speak, with a firmness I did not feel. "Do not go down there," I said. She stared at me, then at the monitor, then at the note. Competence looks like certainty, and I had none left. Her voice dropped, suddenly small. "What is T6?" she asked. "A tag," I said, "a door that should stay shut." We both heard the first sound from below. Not a creak, not a bang, but a soft exhale through the floor vents, cold enough to raise goose flesh. The station lights flickered once, then held steady. A decision formed in her face before she said it. She wanted to see for herself, because that is how new rangers learn. I reached out and caught her wrist, harder than I meant to. 10 seconds of dead air, I said. "You run." Her eyes widened. "You counted that," she said. "I counted everything," I admitted, and the shame in my voice felt like a bruise. We went to the basement together because I could not leave her alone with it. That choice was pro-social and stupid at the same time, and the tunnel loved contradictions. I carried a rope bag from the rescue shelf, and the gear felt like a prayer. At the bottom step, the air changed. The smell of bleach from the mop bucket vanished, replaced by wet dirt and cold metal. My barometer needle dipped, then steadied, hovering like it waited for permission. The generator hum cut out again. No vibration, no sound, just the weight of silence pressing on our ears. Her breath caught, and I saw her start to count, without moving her lips. I pulled the rug back. The hatch sat there like a mouth stitched shut, padlock in place. The rubber seal looked moist, which should not happen on dry concrete. Her whisper came barely audible. "Don't open it," she said. "I have to lock it for good," I said. That sounded strong, like a plan, and I clung to it. My fingers found the key tag T6 in my pocket, warm again, eager. The padlock opened with that same crisp click. I did not lift the hatch yet. Instead, I tied the rope around the shelf leg and looped the other end around my waist. She watched me with tight jaw control. "You go first," she said. "I go only," I corrected, and I hated how that came out like command. The old guilt from that past incident rose sharp, the memory of waiting for clearance. This time I refused to wait. The hatch lifted 2 inches and the tunnel inhaled. The pull hit instantly, harder than before, like it had been training. My rope went taut and the shelf leg groaned in protest. Cold air poured out, then reversed and dragged my flashlight beam downward. The ladder below shivered and droplets flicked up like the tunnel had just licked the air. My barometer needle dove, and the glass face fogged from inside. Her hands grabbed my belt and held. The simple contact grounded me, human and real. I heard her swallow, heard her refuse to scream. "Close it," she said, voice strained. The hatch bucked in my hands. Something below pushed up against it, then pulled down again, testing. My shoulders burned as I fought to keep it from opening wider. A shape moved on the ladder, just beyond flashlight reach. Not a person, not an animal I could name. More like a thick shadow, climbing without steps. My light stuttered, dimmed for a heartbeat, then returned. The tunnel exhaled, and with it came a sound that made my stomach drop. A faint radio click from below, then a voice distant and thin. It was my voice again, closer this time. "Let me out," it said. Her grip tightened until it hurt. Her whisper came fast and panicked. "Is that you?" she asked. "No," I said, and I meant it with everything I had left. The silence snapped in like a door slamming. No generator hum, no ladder rattle, no breath from her, nothing at all. The tunnel held that dead air like it was savoring it. 1, 2, 3. At 5, my barometer needle jerked upward like a heartbeat spike. At 7, the hatch seal softened under my palm, rubber turning tacky. At 9, the voice below laughed once, quiet and satisfied. I slammed the hatch down before 10. The seal hissed shut, and the suction released so suddenly I fell backward into her. The generator hum returned, and it sounded like relief, which made me hate it. We stood there breathing hard, hands shaking, and neither of us spoke for a long time. Speech felt like permission, and I did not want to give any. She finally looked down at the hatch and set it flat. "It wants you to talk," she said. "Or to obey," I answered. Upstairs, the station computer chimed again. Another maintenance ticket had generated, time-stamped for a minute in the future. The subject line read, "Ventilation confirmation required." She stared at it and shook her head slowly. "That's a trap," she said. I nodded, and the certainty between us felt like the only solid thing left. If we tried to follow their instructions, we would keep opening the hatch. If we tried to document, the system would correct our records. We needed something that did not live inside the station network. Paper maybe, but paper already lied. The only thing the tunnel had not rewritten yet was a physical barrier. We moved like people doing storm prep. We dragged a steel filing cabinet over the hatch corner, then another, pinning the rug down. We wedged a crowbar through the cabinet handles so they could not be pulled apart. My barometer sat on the floor beside the cabinets, needle trembling. The glass face had developed a hairline crack from the sudden pressure swings. Each time the needle dipped, the crack seemed to spread a fraction, like time-lapse damage. She ran outside to the generator shed while I stayed by the hatch. Her plan made sense fast. Kill power, kill the station systems, stop the tickets. The problem with sensible plans is the tunnel also understands them. The moment she left the basement, my radio clicked once. Dead air followed, clean and total, like the world had been muted. The barometer needle dipped in a slow inhale, and the cabinets creaked. Footsteps sounded behind me on the stairs. The pattern matched hers. The same boot tread, the same pace. My head turned and nobody stood there. The voice came from the stairwell anyway. It used her tone now, tight with urgency. "Help me," it said. The handwritten note flashed in my mind. "Do not answer when it breathes." My throat tightened so hard the only sound that escaped was a rough exhale. The cabinets shifted a half-inch on the concrete. Cold air leaked from the floor seam, and the smell of wet dirt came stronger, mixed with something like pennies and old batteries. My barometer needle tapped once against the cracked glass, impatient. She came back a moment later for real, breathless, hair damp with sweat. Power shut down in the shed did not change the station lights at all. That fact landed like a verdict. "It kept running," she said. "It runs itself," I said. Her eyes darted to the barometer and widened. The needle was moving in small pulses now. Inhale and pause. Inhale and pause. The rhythm matched a human breath rate, almost polite. "We need to seal it outside the system," she said. "Concrete," I said, and the word tasted like surrender. The station had bags of patch mix for trailhead repairs, and it set fast. Our plan became simple because complicated plans belong to the tunnel. We fetched the bags and water from the maintenance closet. My hands shook so hard I spilled half the mix, and I hated myself for wasting time. Every failure felt like an opening the tunnel could exploit. Halfway through mixing, the station went silent again. No light buzz, no refrigerator hum, no distant wind outside. The quiet felt pressed into the walls, thick enough to touch. My barometer needle froze, not steady, not hovering, but locked in place like the instrument had died. The crack in its glass widened with a soft tick I felt more than heard. She looked at me, eyes wide, and mouthed the count. 1, 2, 3. At 4, the radio on the counter spoke without static. It used the veteran's gravel voice now, steady and cold. "Ventilate before locking," it said. She flinched like she had been slapped. "That's the card," she whispered. "It's bait," I said, voice hoarse. At 8, the hatch under the cabinets thumped once. A weight hit from below, not random, timed. At 9, the cabinet slid another inch, and the crowbar bent with a metallic whine. 10 seconds ended, and we did not run. We chose to stay because leaving meant someone else would open it later. That choice felt heroic for half a second, then felt like being trapped in my own stubbornness. The cabinets lifted a fraction, not enough to topple, just enough to show strength. Cold air seeped out and crawled up my pant legs, raising goose flesh. The smell turned sweeter, wrong in a basement, like wet leaves left too long. My rope bag sat in the corner, still looped and ready. The decision came fast and ugly. I would go down long enough to wedge the hatch from inside while she poured concrete from above. Her eyes went wide. "No," she said, and her voice cracked on the single syllable. "I open it, it inhales," I said. "It wants me anyway." She grabbed my sleeve hard. "You come back," she said. "I will try," I said. And that was the most honest promise I had left. We cleared the cabinets and left the padlock off. My hands hovered over the hatch while I listened for breath. The tunnel stayed quiet, too quiet, like it was waiting for permission. The barometer needle, now cracked, started moving again. It dipped in a slow inhale, then paused. The pause felt like a decision point. I lifted the hatch on the inhale. Suction grabbed my arms, yanked me forward, and the ladder below clanged as something moved away. I dropped onto the ladder rungs fast, gripping metal that felt damp and cold. My headlamp beam cut into the tunnel and showed concrete walls at first. Then the concrete ended and the passage turned into packed earth reinforced with old timbers. Wetness beaded on everything and the air tasted like rust. The tunnel exhaled behind me, pushing my shirt up my back. It did not feel like airflow anymore. It felt like breath with intention. I climbed down until my boots hit mud. A deeper darkness waited beyond the ladder base, and my light refused to reach far. Something had scratched letters into the timber beside the ladder. T6. The code anchor felt like a joke now, stamped into wood like a warning nobody could erase. My barometer hung from my pocket, and its needle moved in tiny, panicked ticks. The crack in the glass had spidered into a star. The sound came from farther down the passage, not footsteps, more like a soft dragging. My light caught a shape at the edge of distance, low and hunched. Then it slid away. No face, no eyes, only a silhouette that moved wrong for any animal I knew. My radio crackled against my chest. A whisper came through, thin enough to be mistaken for static. It said my name in my own voice, and that nearly broke me. The urge to answer was physical, like sneezing. My mouth opened, and I forced it shut with my teeth clenched. The air in the tunnel warmed, and the wet smell grew stronger. I found what the system wanted me to find. A vent pipe ran along the ceiling, capped with a handwheel valve. Bright metal against dark earth. A laminated card hung from it on a zip tie, pristine and clean. The card text was perfect. No smear, no crack. It read in simple black print, "Ventilate before locking." My stomach turned at the elegance of it. The trap rule did not look like a trap when it was clean. It looked like safety. The veteran's voice came back in my memory like a shove. "Do not ventilate." The tunnel wanted obedience more than air. I reached up anyway, not to turn the valve, but to rip the card free. The The zip tie snapped with a sharp pop, and the sound traveled down the passage like a signal. The tunnel inhaled hard enough to make my ears pop. My barometer needle slammed down, and the glass face finally broke. A small shard cut my thumb, and pain grounded me, bright and real. The silhouette down the passage froze, then shifted closer by inches without any sound. Above me, muffled through earth and wood, her voice called down. "Are you in?" she shouted. Answering felt dangerous, so I did it anyway, fast and low. "Pour," I called. That single word felt like stepping on a wire. The tunnel exhaled, and the air carried a faint echo of my own voice repeating it. "Pour," it whispered back, softer, hungrier. I jammed my shoulder against the hatch underside and pushed up. The suction fought me, pulling down, and the tug of war happened through my bones. Concrete started to slosh through gaps above, cold splatters hitting my sleeves. The tunnel inhaled again. The air pressure shift yanked my headlamp beam sideways, and the silhouette surged forward in that same breath. It moved like a shadow pulled by a vacuum, sliding, not stepping. My throat tightened with panic. The space around me shrank, not physically, but in the way fear narrows options. I pushed harder against the hatch and felt concrete settle, thickening. The silhouette stopped a few yards away and lifted something that might have been an arm. My radio clicked once. Then dead air flooded the tunnel so clean it felt like falling. Silence pressed in, and I started counting without meaning to. 1, 2, 3. At 4, my own voice came from the dark, close now. "Open it," it said, calm, like a supervisor. At 6, the barometer shard in my hand vibrated faintly. At 8, the silhouette leaned forward, and my headlamp caught one detail that made my stomach drop. It wore a ranger patch on its shoulder, half torn, soaked dark. At 9, I understood what the system was building. Not a monster. Replacements. Whoever obeyed long enough became part of the tunnel's rules. 10 seconds hit, and I did not run because I could not. My shoulder pinned the hatch, and the concrete above thickened into a seal. If I let go, the hatch would open and the tunnel would inhale her down. I thought of a clearance form and the sound of a man bleeding out. My shoulder held. My radio came back with a thin crackle. Her voice sounded strained, crying without tears. "Hold," she said. "I'm holding," I whispered, and my voice sounded wrong, like the tunnel had roughened it. Concrete hardened faster than it should have. Heat rose from the seal, warming my shoulder through my jacket. The tunnel inhaled and exhaled around me, furious like a lung fighting a plugged airway. The silhouette surged forward on the next inhale. It got close enough that my headlamp caught the edge of its shape, too thin, too folded. A hand reached out and the fingers bent backward at the knuckles, like they were learning human form. Terror wanted to scream. I gave it something smaller, a refusal. My mouth stayed shut, and my breath stayed shallow. The silhouette paused. Then the tunnel did something cruelly intelligent. It exhaled a warm rush of air that smelled like my kitchen, like coffee and cheap soap. For a moment, home flashed in my mind with sharp comfort. The comfort was bait, and I knew it. My eyes still burned with the urge to believe it. That was the deepest trap of all, the one that uses what you love. The air above the hatch changed. Concrete set with a final hardening crackle, and the hatch stopped moving under my shoulder. The tunnel inhaled one last violent time, then failed to pull me. The silhouette jerked like a puppet whose string got cut. It retreated into the dark without sound, and the tunnel's breathing slowed into a simmering pulse. My barometer shattered, stopped moving entirely. Above me, her voice came muffled through the seal. "Get out," she said, urgent. I climbed the ladder fast, hands slipping on wet rungs. The moment my head reached the hatch underside, I realized the seal had formed a smooth gray ceiling. No gap remained, no seam, no way up. Panic hit like a wave. My hands slapped the concrete, searching for weakness, and it felt solid, already cured. The tunnel inhaled behind me, patient now, like it knew time was on its side. My radio crackled once, and her voice came through, distorted. "Nothing's coming through," she said. "Signal me." The tunnel wanted me to answer. It wanted my voice more than my body. My throat tightened until speech felt impossible, and maybe that saved me. I tapped the ladder rung with my flashlight 3 times, hard and fast. Sound traveled up the metal, and I heard her answer with 2 taps from above. It was a dumb little code, human and improvised, and it felt like resistance. A thin line of light appeared along the concrete edge. Not a crack, not a seam, but a place where the seal failed just enough. Her crowbar scraped, and the sound came like salvation. She pried and hammered until the concrete chipped. Dust rained down, gritty in my teeth, and I kept my mouth shut anyway. When the opening widened, air rushed in from above, warm and clean. The tunnel tried to inhale through that gap. Suction grabbed my jacket and tugged me down, but her hands caught my collar and hauled. I climbed like my life depended on someone else's grip, because it did. I made it out with my lungs burning and my voice gone. A whisper was all that remained, raw and thin. The basement air smelled normal again, bleach and dust, and I wanted to cry at how ordinary it was. We locked the basement door and shoved the filing cabinets against it anyway. We taped a handwritten warning to the door in thick marker, then taped over that, then wrote it again. I carved the same words into a metal plate with a screwdriver until my hand cramped. "Never open the trapdoor." She drove the incident to the district office in person. Digital tickets kept generating and vanishing, so she brought photos, the broken barometer glass, and the ripped laminated card. By the time she arrived, the photos on her phone had blurred into gray smears that showed nothing. The physical item stayed real at least. The barometer shard still sat in my pocket like a cold tooth. The card text kept changing when I looked away, letters smudging, then reforming. The district office response came 2 days later and made my blood run cold. They thanked us for our diligence and said the station basement did not have a trapdoor. They attached an updated floor plan that showed nothing in that corner. The system had corrected the record. If I had not felt the suction with my own hands, I might have believed it. That thought terrified me more than the tunnel ever did. My voice never fully returned. Some mornings, only a rasp comes out, and my throat aches, like I swallowed sand. Doctors call it inflammation and stress, which is a neat way to avoid words like curse. The new ranger transferred out within a month. She did not quit the service, but she refused to work anywhere with a basement. She texted me sometimes, short messages, never using names, never asking questions she did not want answered. The station stayed open. The basement door got repainted and the metal plate I carved disappeared. A new key tag appeared on the board in its place, bright and clean. T6. That tag shows up in my life now like a splinter you cannot pull. Once it was in my pocket after a grocery run, warm against my leg. Another time, It sat on my kitchen counter beside my keys, stamped like it belonged there. My house goes quiet at night, and I still count 10 seconds without meaning to. Dead air presses in, and I wait for the generator hum that does not exist. Sometimes my radio, powered off in a drawer, clicks once, then stops. I sent a written warning to the district office in a paper envelope, certified mail. I included the broken barometer glass and the ripped laminated card. The return receipt came back signed by a name I did not recognize. Inside my own copy folder, the photocopy of my warning page turned blank a week later. Ink vanished from the paper like it had been erased by light. Only the indentations remained, grooves you could feel with a fingertip. That is why I'm writing this in plain words, and that is why I am keeping it out of their system. If you ever work a station with a new key tag that looks too clean, pay attention. If you see T6 anywhere it does not belong, do not convince yourself it is coincidence. Most of all, do not let the simple rules calm you. The tunnel doesn't want you dead. It wants you compliant enough to replace whatever is down there already. I can still feel the hatch seal biting my fingers. I can still smell wet dirt and cold metal when my house gets too quiet. Some nights my throat tightens and I wake up tasting rust, unable to speak at all. Do you think they knew before it happened?